Hey everyone, welcome to Delenta Elevate webinar. Again, if you're catching up this live, catching up the replay or joining us live, we are very, very glad you're here. I'm Sam, I'm the founder of Delenta. We are a digital coaching management platform and we help coaching companies to streamline and operations and also scale the business. This topic is really interesting, isn't it? Every time you open LinkedIn or paper, you basically see AI everywhere and how it's impacting the coaching industry. Delenta, our team, myself, we speak to coaches, solopreneurs, coaching organizations, practitioners, at least daily. And whenever we speak to them, it's really clear. They talk about technology features and all those things. But what I'm hearing is what they say is about the importance of trust, ethics, and protecting the human core of coaching. We want to embrace technology. The world of technology is always changing, but as human beings, we really want to embrace those human values, especially in the coaching space. Now, that's exactly the reason why we put together this event. We want to bring in voices who can speak to the real practical and ethical challenges. Everybody who's in the coaching space as coaching professionals, you want to lead with intentions and care. Especially you want to protect customers, right? Especially when you're dealing with those coaching, or you're working with the corporates or government agencies. So you want to see how carefully you can handle these technologies in your coaching practice. So this is the reason why we create such an event for you to, again, collaborate with us and speak with these amazing speakers. So let me quickly introduce to our speakers again. First up, we are going to be joined by Sue Turner. She's one of the UK's leading experts in AI and governance and ethics. She's the CEO of AI Governance Limited, and she works with governments, businesses, and organizations to help them use AI responsibly and transparently. So one of the things I really like about Sue is when I spoke to her first time, this was like a few months ago, she's really clear and practical about how to think about the risk in AI. She brings so much clarity to this space. And also, I would say she's also recognized with an OBE for her work in social justice. So you want to talk about a little bit about that?
Well,
Your OBE?
yeah, it's a deeply mysterious thing, the honours system in the UK. You're outside it and you don't really understand how it works. But yeah, basically it was a recognition actually from the Queen, the previous Queen, Queen Elizabeth, which came out of the blue. I was really shocked and honoured, but I think a lot of it was to do with the work that I did for 5 years as chief executive of one of the UK's oldest and largest community foundations, an organisation called Quartet Community Foundation, where there we had a fantastic team of people giving about £5 million a year, amongst other things, in grants to help disadvantaged people, disadvantaged communities. And in my time as chief executive there, we doubled the permanent endowment. So of course, that meant we could do so much more good to help people and communities. So you never really get told why you're being given these awards, but I think it was because we were really trying to level things up and make life and society fairer and more equal for everybody. And that's then motivated me to do what I do now in technology.
Wow, that's incredible. Well done. Well done. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for being here, Sue. Thank you very much. So, and of course, we got Dr. Pamela Larde, one of my friends, proud to say that, and also personally so excited to have with us. So Pamela is a coaching thought leader. She's an educator, and she's written an amazing book about joy. I encourage everybody to read it. It's a wonderful, heart-centered coach. And also, one of the things I'll basically talk about her is she brings that heart and clarity to the conversation. So she's very heart-centered in that sense. She will be speaking about how coaches can integrate AI and in a way to protect the soul of a coaching and how you do a transformational things with the technology without being scared and move away from it. Pamela, wonderful to have you here, and thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you. I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to enjoying this conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so listen, so get comfy. Grab a cuppa, and if you haven't already, of course, and get ready to dive into some really important conversation. And there's some opportunity to ask questions later on. So think about what you like to know, and we are here to answer any questions, support you where we can. let's talk about a little bit of what is this event and what is Delenta, because some people ask, how do you pronounce this word Delen what? Like, is it Delenta or Delenta? So anyway, so it's a Dutch word and an English word we basically put together to say thank you for sharing. We did not start as a technology platform for coaching. We started as a simple social enterprise experiment for people to share knowledge for free with others. So that's how we started. We created a community, we created technology to people to share knowledge with the emerging countries and people who with the disadvantaged backgrounds and the people who seek that knowledge. After pandemic, we came across sort of coaches using our product to help others. And they are the one who said, hey, create us a white label solution from the technology that we created. And that's how we started Delenta. So we do events every month with our community. In fact, I still remember Danya in this audience, she basically mentioned, you remember the first event we did, and I was sweating and I was nervous. So we had like such a great journey because of the coaches that we surrounded us with. We have amazing people who come from very much diverse backgrounds from 26 plus different countries. We are very proud what we have created with our coaching community. So I want to coming into the topic a little bit, but also want to remind ourselves the journey that coaching has been. I was reading the ICF report recently, and they recorded prior to pandemic 2019, almost 50% of the virtual coaching is done on virtually. And then coming to 2021, after pandemic, everything became virtual, 87%. And that is just after pandemic, 2021. Actually, that brought a lot of chaos to the space as well, because there's a lot of technology, subscriptions, the tools, spreadsheets, a lot more tools to your world. And then coming to today, we created a beautiful coaching platform because we was going to want to bring all of those tools under one solution, have one login. However, it's really interesting to see how we see the next 5 years or 10 years, the coaching going to look like. So that's the topic about today. But I also want to ask you at this stage, what do you think? Let's think about a coach in the future. In 5 years' time, is a coach going to look like this, wearing some digital blazer, or is it going to be a person with the 3 arms? It will be interesting, right? You're going to go like, no more human coaching. So at this stage, I'd love to get your thoughts on what do you think the future of AI coaching look like? If you can spend like next 10 seconds, just answer the question, what do you think? We just want to understand what you really feel about the current situation with AI coaching. You feel curious or you're positive? All right. Can we quickly see the results? Wow. That's very good sign. So, I mean, somewhat curious, want to learn more, brilliant, and also positive, which is a great thing. I think that's what Sue and Pam and we are talking about, right? We want basically us to be curious, open-minded about it. At the same time, we also want to make sure we support that the new trends without us basically forgetting about human values in coaching. I came across this World Economic Forum recently, and it talked about the professions that impacting by AI. What are the industries or job titles that can impact adversely or replace? So out of that, we found teaching, mentoring, and coaching is in the bottom. That's the last 5 jobs to basically or industries to get impacted. If you look below that, you see creative thinking and endurance persuasion and empathy, active listening. All of these things somewhat related to coaching anyway. And then this Oxford Brook University recently basically did a paper on how AI is not really intelligent to do coaching. So we believe this space is all about human coaching. We believe that the compassion of human values like engagement, honesty, trust, all of these values going to stay for a long time. And that basically help this industry to grow. But with the technology like AI going to really empower those great human qualities and also help you to basically make that impact that you want to make. But again, if you're not a coach who, I'm sure we don't have one like that, but in case if you're thinking about those, not thinking about those human values, of course, those will get affected very quickly because that's what the robot's about. They have no soul, right? So on that note, I'm going to hand over this to Sue. So she has not a lot more qualification and experience in the governance side to talk about this. So Sue, over to you.
Great. Thanks ever so much, Sam. And a great introduction. And it's a real honor and privilege to be with you all today and to be thinking about these complex issues and thinking about how we change our future. 'Cause I think you've got to imagine that future. And it's perhaps not that we're having an exoskeleton that we put on when we go to work, but it is about having everyone having a helpful, personalized coach with them, potentially whenever they want it, wherever they are. And that may be a coach that's monitoring stress levels, analyzing interactions, suggesting next best actions. And I think the opportunity there, well, Delenta, I think it's great that you've got this clear focus on supporting coaches and mentors globally to amplify their impact, whether that is involving technology or not. My own background is that I've worked half my career for very dynamic, very entrepreneurial businesses and half for not-for-profits. And in all my different roles, I've been really frustrated that we all generate data in silos and then we keep it in those silos. So as a leader, you have this gut feel, if only you could link all the different pieces of information together, you'd be able to find insights that would help you drive your organization forward. And that's what drove me to go and do a master's degree, an MSc in AI and data science, and at the same time set up the company AI Governance with a mission to inspire as many people as possible, that's all of you, to use artificial intelligence with wisdom and integrity. And that wisdom and integrity is where we get this intersection between what the technology can do, but what we actually want it to do, what's important to us to retain as humans. I've recently taken on a role working with the University of Bristol Business School, looking at how we can, again, use the tools and techniques and help the next generation of people coming through to understand the potential of AI as well. So it could be a very dystopian future where the machines are controlling us, or it could be a future where we control the machines. We decide when they're switched on and off, and we keep them out of areas of our lives that we want to keep private. So maybe that's the best of both worlds that we're aiming for. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start sharing my screen so that we can have a look at a few slides and a few examples and information. So what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about what AI actually is to start with, because we must never assume everybody's on the same page with that. And then we're going to look at opportunities in coaching, and Pamela, I'm sure, has got some fantastic information to share with us there. And we'll look at the threats as well, things that we need to be aware of and wary of too. So first of all, what actually is AI, this artificial intelligence that we're all talking about? Well, despite the fact that the idea of machines that can learn has been around since the 1950s, actually, it's been around for a long time, there is still no single one definition of what artificial intelligence actually is. So all sorts of organizations have their own definition, but there's no one that's accepted by the World Economic Forum or the OECD. Everybody's got their own. Broadly, what we're talking about is computers finding patterns hidden in large amounts of data and then using those patterns to predict, to personalize, and to automate. And that works across all the different types of AI. Everything that we're doing fits within that framework. So what sort of questions can AI actually answer for us? Well, there are many, and this screen shows just a few of the different algorithms that we might use. So first of all, classification. We often want to know which category to put something into. So a doctor might look at images of lungs and try and figure out which are showing signs of lung cancer and which are not. Well, that's a classification task, and AI tools can do that as well as, and sometimes better than, the best trained humans. Then there's clustering. That's used a lot, for example, when we want to buy insurance. One of my non-executive director roles has been in the insurance sector. And when we want to give a quote to somebody for the premium that will charge them for insurance, then we group them together with other people, cluster them together to see what characteristics does this new person have that make them similar to other policyholders, so we know what sort of premium level to quote them. Next there, you've got regression. That's when we're saying, does one factor relate to one or more other factors? So if I'm a manufacturer of ice cream, I might want to think about the prediction for next week's weather. Are there school holidays coming up? Are there other festivals coming up? And then I can predict how much ice cream I need to make this week and to sell in the future. Fourth there, we've got anomaly detection, and that's used a lot in banking, where we say, does the pattern of what we're seeing fit into what's normal? So a bank can use this to trigger a warning if my credit card's used in a country where I don't normally use it. And fifth there, we've got recommendation. And that's saying, given what the data tell us, what's the next best step? So given what you've watched recently on Netflix and knowing what films people like you tend to enjoy, what film is Netflix going to recommend to you next? At the side there, we've got just a little mention of generative AI. And of course, that's the big thing that's been in the headlines for 2 years now. Generative AI goes beyond making that prediction, and it then automates something. It automates the creation of entirely new content. And that can be text, images, music. But again, it's finding a pattern and then doing something based on that pattern it's found. And here's an example. The video here shows a generative AI tool in use. It's a tool called Synthesia that is very easy to use to make training videos, for example. And you can use it in lots of different languages. And the person who appears to be talking on the side of the screen here is not a person. That's an avatar. That person's never existed, never will exist. So the tool here, Synthesia, can be used to create a script for the film and then actually create this film as you see it here. Again, it's a giant prediction engine. It's not actually finding ground truth. So when I use Synthesia, for example, to write the scripts, it's not great. It's not at the level of complexity that I need for the sorts of messages I'm trying to convey. So we always use humans to write the script, and then they use the AI tool to create the video. Now, crucial to this when we're using AI tools in a public-facing way like this is to be transparent, to tell people we have used AI. So there's a disclaimer at the end of this film, for example, that explains humans wrote the script and an AI tool was used to create the video. Now, all the different types of AI that I've just been mentioning are what we call narrow artificial intelligence. So they are focused on one task. A self-driving car, for example, incredibly complex. There's lots of different algorithms, lots of different types of AI all coming together to drive a car safely. But it can't then decide to go off and write poetry. It's still narrow artificial intelligence. Even the most advanced AI models we have today that sometimes can seem like they're magic, they are not. They are not artificial general intelligence. That would be the type of AI that was better than our human brains. And that's the holy grail for many researchers around the world. Companies like DeepMind and OpenAI, they're wanting to create AI that can reason, think about anything. So it would be like the human brain, but even more so. And then, of course, we have to ask ourselves, if we created something like that, would it actually be sentient? Would we have created a new species? And we also need to ask ourselves, if we could create it, should we? Would that actually be a good idea? But away from that future, which we don't have right now, and back to the sorts of AI tools we have today, there are many AI tools that are built into things that you and I use every day. So the spam filter, for example, that decides whether emails coming into your inbox are spam or not, that is using a very simple type of AI. Google Maps I use today to find a building that I hadn't been to before. That's using AI in lots of different ways. And we're using AI built into tools at work, whether we know it or not. So thinking then about how we might use artificial intelligence, well, this screen shows many, many different ways that organizations can use artificial intelligence. Thinking about coaching, that might be using it to personalize your sales. So you're sending an email to somebody which is very, very detailed and personalized just to their interests without you having to separately make all that script together. You might be generating content for social media or a newsletter, and you might be using artificial intelligence to streamline your back office, to write job descriptions when you're recruiting new people to work for you, and so much more. So there's a massive amount of things that we could use artificial intelligence for. I'm going to stop screen sharing at this point and come to Sam, because I think this is a good chance to have a discussion really about what we might want to use AI for. And then later on, we're going to get on to the risks of doing it. But Sam, I was thinking about that personalization point. I wonder if that's a good place to start, because we know there are lots of tools that we can use to make transcripts of, say, a coaching session. And I expect some people in the audience here today use that regularly for their own reference. The next stage then is to set up a system that might perhaps give the coach feedback during the session. Other questions you could ask, potential avenues to explore. Is that something you're finding people want to use?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, thank you so much for that sort of building up to this our topic, of course, giving background to AI and how generative AI works. Absolutely. I mean, something that Pam and I have been chatting about, like how AI is normally used by a coach and where the areas need to be vigilant about. But at the same time, there are excitement around, like even in Delenta, we are building that AI note taker, how we can basically be more specific to AI, specific to coaching, executive coaching, and create certain themes to give information. So on that note, Pam, like, do you want to come in and really give us a overview about how you normally use that? What you're seeing in the sort of coaching industry mostly, because you're training coaches as well at the same time, isn't it? So
Yes. I mean, this is relevant for pretty much all facets of my coaching work. So whether it is me being a coach, and the front facing aspect of coaching, the coach training academy. So from the standpoint of what coaches are being taught and how they're being trained. And then in the academic world, I am a professor of a PhD program that has coaching and leadership as a part of our curriculum. So I find it really relevant to integrate these modalities into all of the different areas that, whether you are a front facing coach, whether you are a coach educator or a student of the coaching profession. As far as the note taking, I mean, that's probably one of the most basic down to earth uses of AI, like the entry point, I should say, for people who are looking to figure out how to integrate AI into their work. One of the biggest questions I get is AI going to replace coaches? And I think once we understand all of the things, so for example, what Sue was pointing out, there are so many different ways that AI exists. So it's not always just about the bot. And that's what people think about, the bot, the chat bot, the interaction. But no, it can't replace coaches in the grand sense, because there are a lot of ways that we can use it to enhance our content delivery, curriculum development. If we want to have courses that go alongside our coaching practice, we can, as you mentioned with Synthesia, we can have an avatar made. We can create videos via AI. I mean, there's so many ways it can be used that goes beyond the chat box. But I will say, entry point, if you're really just trying to get started on this, starting with a note taker, I think, is a really great place to start. My clients love, after the conversation, that almost immediately I send them the transcripts or the note taking from that conversation.
Are you using any system that's prompting you as the coach and is actually in live time suggesting avenues that you might want to follow? Because this is something that gets talked a lot in the research, but I always wonder how far people are comfortable with that. Certainly in other environments, say call centers, what we know is those sorts of prompts coming from AI are great for junior members of staff, less experienced people, but they're not so great for really experienced people. Have you tried that at all?
I have not, and part of the reason is I'm curious about my ability to pay attention to the feedback that's coming in real time and being able to integrate that into a conversation. I imagine that would take some practice. You wouldn't want to just jump in there and start that right away with a client. But no, that is not a tool that I have used in real time in the practice.
Yeah. And I think your point about bots is really excellent. And I know from my own experience going back in the past, before generative AI, before AI tools got more sophisticated, if you were, say, dealing with a bank and using a bot, it was really annoying because all it had was a set spectrum of questions and answer pairs. So I would ask it a question and it couldn't answer it, or it would give me a completely irrelevant answer because that's all it had to choose from. Now with generative AI, these machines can pick answers from so much of the world that they're learning from, and that's a great opportunity. And recently there was an Open AI's latest version, it's GPT 4.5, was tested with 280 participants to see if we humans could understand the difference between when the bot was giving the answer and when a human was given the answer. And it actually fooled people. People thought the computer was human 73% of the time, which is massive. And that was significantly more often than they could pick out real humans. So we're getting to this world where if we are using these bots in coaching, we may think that we are superior and that people will always know when it's a human dealing with them. Actually, the data suggesting that the bots may be able to fool us into thinking that they're the humans. That's when it gets a little bit scary.
And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people are asking that question. Will they replace us? Will they replace us? And I think that while that is a valid question, I think that there are other questions that we should be asking, which is what are the range of possibilities that can enhance the work that we do with the use of AI, as opposed to, because if we only focus on whether or not it can replace us, and I'm a qualitative researcher, so closed-ended questions are already a red flag, but it is what can it do? How can we expand our work?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I know one company I was talking to, they are very interested in helping people to provide those avatars of themselves. This wasn't in the coaching context, but I can see it working in coaching so that they could be online for their clients 24/7, which then gives you the opportunity to have that global presence, which is just not something we can do as humans, to be around all the time. We can use generative AI tools to really boost our creativity, to give us new ideas, just as much as content. But the thing that Sam and I have talked about in the past that really appeals to me about using AI in coaching is that ability to democratize it, to open up coaching so that it's available for everybody whenever they need it as a foundation. And I guess in my view, I'm thinking there'll always be a need for that premium level of service where you've got humans who can afford to pay, who get a higher level of service, but to be able to democratize coaching and make it available and support available for everybody, I see as a huge benefit.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good, I mean, Julian and myself actually yesterday had a conversation with an investor who reached out to Julian about technologies in coaching. So basically there are two individuals who basically was going about asking all these questions about us, like similar kind of questions, hey, they believe this is how the world is going. But the interesting thing is, like you said, so there's a level of coaching that you can conduct that we believe, like teaching or like Synthesia or any other tool can do to a certain level, right? That definitely can be done. Like courses can do certain level, like Google can do, YouTube can do. They have their own roles, and now there's opportunity for us to create a new service, right? There's a scale that you can have by creating that opportunities. So anyone who's thinking about that sort of a creative angle, you have such a opportunity in this space. Pam and I have been talking about, yes, you have such an insight towards that, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that just to give a tangible example of how we can go beyond the bots and the avatars, and I mean those are not necessarily the avatar, but more so the automated response. One of the things that I've done for my clients is I sort of have a pre-coaching introductory course, or here's a few materials to better understand my style and my approach, or whatever the overarching topic they want to talk about, if it's career advancement. And what I actually spent time doing last night was taking my materials and having it created into a script that an avatar using my voice can introduce to the client, because it's not normally something I introduce anyway. It's reading materials, it's things that I would give them in advance. But this allows them now to have a video recording of here's what is coming. It's in my voice. And I haven't yet decided if I'm going to use my face. I've done that for other things where it's my avatar and it looks like me. It's a little glitchy, as Alan mentioned here in the comment, but the voice is pretty good for me anyway. It's not exact, but it's good enough for me to say, here's some preliminary materials and a video that you can view in advance, and let's talk about it when we have our first session. I am so excited about the opportunity to be able to create things like that for my clients. And it's so easy to create. It's unbelievable. It feels like I'm cheating. So
yeah, lots of people say that. I feel like I'm cheating using these tools. There's other automations that we can bring in as well. So that sort of readiness assessment that, again, you might send out to new clients, just sending that out automatically with an AI bot behind it to help people if they get stuck on particular questions. I know for some larger organizations where they've got multiple coaches and clients, they're using AI to just find those subtle patterns that suggest the best match between coach and client, which is quite an interesting thing to experiment with and see how that works versus the human way of doing it. Appointment management, of course, that's something which gets us all down, but we don't need to spend time on it now. We can set up systems to do it for ourselves. So yeah, there's lots of those automations that we can use, which I think are great opportunities. Sam, would it be a good idea if I sort of go into some of the threats at this stage and we get away from some of the excitement and get a little bit more
Excitement, yes, absolutely. I think time, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that we should be sort of concerned about, like, how much you use AI. Now it's time to understand what's the right way to use that as well. So there are, enough tips. Basically, we have create articles as well, but, so it would be wonderful to hear from you what are the threats and, challenges.
Yeah, let's have a look at some of those then. There certainly are many threats and risks we need to be aware of. So just a few on the screen here. This was one of them as an eating disorder charity in the United States who put a chat bot onto their website, and with all good intentions. The problem was they hadn't tested it enough. So it started being able to be prompted by people to give advice that was harmful, advice on restricting calories, other harmful behavior. And Sam, in your slide deck, you mentioned the Air Canada example. So this was Air Canada. They had a person a passenger, he had been bereaved. So he went onto their system and he used their bot to get advice about what the policies were for getting a refund and changing tickets when you've been bereaved. The bot made things up because fundamentally that's what these things do. They are all about predicting things. So it was just predicting some words which would make for a good policy in the case of people who've been bereaved. But it wasn't actually drawing from the real information from Air Canada. And that's what it should have been restricted to do. Air Canada made it worse because when all this came out, instead of just saying to the person, oh, sorry, our bot gave you some bad advice, that's not actually our real policy, you're now financially disadvantaged, never mind, we'll put you right, we'll give you the money back. They didn't. They said, no, you relied on the bot. The bot is a separate entity from us, and therefore we're not liable. This is horrendous. Of course you're liable if you're a company and you're using AI in any way. You can't just say, no, it's a machine, it's separate from us. So they really compounded the problem there. I think AI is a competitor, certainly something that is a threat for many sectors, but coaching in particular. If an AI model is perceived as being almost as good as a human interaction, but a lot cheaper, then there are people who will prefer that. There are some studies that have found that some clients are more interested in using AI as a coach than having a human coach. And that can be, perhaps they feel psychologically safer, that the machine's not going to judge them. So that is an opportunity, but also a threat there. And as we mentioned before, how will we be able to tell if AI is as good as human? How will we be able to judge the quality of it? We know in coaching that skills and competencies that are the bedrock of good coaching are not universally defined. So if we're going to test an AI model to see how good it is, what are we testing it against? We haven't got that universal set of competencies that we really understand and all agree. For example, an AI model might be trained on data that includes, say, Instagram influencers' views on how to live your best life. Would we say that's solid basis for coaching advice? It doesn't seem like it to me, but others may judge it differently. Another area to be aware of is that tech companies are really keen to do things like have gamification in some of their services. So that's when you're making things a bit competitive, and they're using that a lot in the education sphere, for example. And that, for me, again, seems like it might not be very appropriate in coaching, but beware if you're seeing a business that's trying to sell you ideas for using AI in coaching, and they actually come from an education technology background or some other background, they may be putting gamification in there or other AI tools that just really aren't appropriate for what we're trying to do here. Lack of empathy is an issue. Some bots have been shown to have quite a good stab at that, but it's not inherent in the way that they work. And fundamentally, we're changing society when we provide low-cost AI bots that more people can afford, but not actually having human coaching, a better quality coaching available to all, because that's only available to the wealthy few. So when you're thinking about what you might use AI for, these 10 steps for getting started with AI can be really, really helpful. I don't have time to go into all the detail today, but I'm sure, Sam, you'll be circulating the slide deck. Now, I'll just touch on the first 2 points. The first one is, can we use AI to solve real business problems? Sometimes people get caught up in this shiny new tool and start using it and realize, it actually didn't help us in any way. It's not solved a problem. So always focus on what problems you want to solve by predicting, personalizing, or automating things. And the second point there is about data. If you've collected lots of wonderful, rich data, where do you think the insights are hidden? If you've got a gut feel where they think there might be something that would really help you take your organization or your coaching practice forward. I wanted to go to talk about responsible AI in coaching, because I'm sure Sam and Pam have got views on this one. Responsible AI isn't very well defined, just like AI itself doesn't have a single definition. But what we do talk about a lot is having an AI framework, a responsible AI framework that prompts you to think about how you're using AI wisely. And this is the framework that we've developed at AI Governance. So you've got accountability there. How are you going to make ethical choices? Who makes them? What controls are in place to ensure that you're abiding by the rules? Human agency and decision making. How far are you going to take actually automating processes end to end with no human involvement? What's the role for people in overseeing and intervening? Robustness and resilience, really important. There are all sorts of technical reasons why AI models can change over time, or they can open us up to new cybersecurity issues. So you've got to be really aware of those. In your business, the coaching business, of course, data governance and the privacy of your client's data is absolutely on your mind all the time. But you've got to also think to yourself, if you're using AI, do we actually have consent if we're using personal data, sensitive data? Have we got consent to use it in this specific case? Transparency and explainability, a massive subject in my world. That's talking about when are we going to tell people that we're using artificial intelligence, and what will we tell them about how it works and how we're using it? Again, another big subject is diversity, non-discrimination and fairness. There's huge issues here about the data that we use to build models and the way we use them. What's an acceptable level of statistical bias, and what are the impacts of the way we're using these models? And finally, on impacts, societal and environmental impacts of using AI can be really significant. So we need to think those through as well. Again, Sam, I'll stop the screen sharing at that point, and a good chance to talk about some of these potential negatives of what we might use AI for, and maybe bring in some of the audience questions as well.
Absolutely. I think this is such a great topic. And I mean, in fact, sort of this is a few months ago, I was at a personal event. I was invited to talk about AI and in coaching. And these people are quite, I was surprised actually how people tend to use ChatGPT or any other LLM, just copying those notes and getting information out of it. So that actually triggered me this event. I was just thinking, wow, like I was saying, hey, that you can disable the learnability of this AI and LLM. So every LLM have their own privacy policies, and they need to have those terms, and they need to tell you exactly how they use data, and also they should basically give you the ability to switch off those learnabilities. And so every LLM that you use that basically have that. And if you don't, you can always ask their customer support and say, hey, is my data is being shared somewhere or used to train your algorithm or not? So on that note, Pam, I would like to ask you this question about, you talk about the note taker and how you basically share the notes with your customers once you complete the session. Do you, of course, as a policy or your probably previous policies or terms, do you cover that? Did you update the contract? How would you mind just sharing the best practice of that side of things, of course?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a really important question, and it is from the beginning, it's in the contract, and just making the client aware that I generally will utilize AI tools to record and note take our sessions. That's confidential. So I go through the whole confidentiality piece, and I not only just have it in the contract, but we talk about it because I need to verbally know that they understand it and that they're okay with it. And in fact, it has been welcome. I haven't had any cases in which anybody felt even apprehensive about it. So that, for me, that process is embedded right in the beginning at the contract conversation. And I see a really great question from Kathy in the box as well, in the chat box, about how this impacts international coaching work with clients who might have different countries with different policies and so forth.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a really crucial question, because we don't have a uniform set of requirements for AI use at all. So the EU brought out the EU AI Act, and that's bits of it are coming into force. Some of it's in force already. And that is quite strict and very governed by rules and having different risk levels set for different uses of artificial intelligence. The UK, where I'm based, has said that it's not going to bring a similar legislation forward. The US was starting to bring in some regulation which might have affected coaching practice, but that, since the new administration came in, has been pushed back. And there's some discussions going on at federal level at the moment about actually banning individual states from bringing forward legislation. So there's a lot going on in this area at the moment, and I think it's really hard to keep up with. What I would say is that there's a new, well, relatively new international standard, ISO 42001, That's entirely voluntary. Very few organizations in the world have got certified to this standard at the moment, but it's worth having a look at because they've got some really good ideas in there for management of AI systems. And the rest of it is down to ethics. What is your personal judgment about what's a sensible thing to do, what's a fair thing to do? And of course, that's involving lots of gray areas. But the crucial thing is, well, I'd say two things. One, keep an inventory of where you're actually using AI because it's creeping into your organizations through third-party tools all the time. So keep a log of where it is. And then two, have those discussions. If you're a solopreneur, then have discussions with other people in your network and think about what you could and couldn't use AI for and document your decisions. So at least you've got something hard there that says, we have thought about some of these issues and this is the judgment that we took.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's really interesting. I mean, I'm sure, like, if you have any more questions, please post on, on the Zoom chat, and we'll pick it up a little later. So
we do have one that popped up if you want to, from Olivia Gibson. Are strides being made to consider coaching more affordable through insurances and other creative pay structures? Maybe as a performance metric, what can we coaches advocate more importantly? Coaching. And the reason why I find that question particularly important is because as we think about people choosing, well, I'm just going to go the cheaper route. I'm not going to pay all this for coaching. I'll just get a bot. I think that's a really important question to highlight here.
So many people talk about this. I mean, technology, I've just tried to sort of figure out whether I should talk about the technology or not, from the sort of technology perspective, because these could be black boxes. Like, again, how you use data, like you said, like, ethics, trust, and do you really trust these partners that do you know about the ownerships and how they probably use that data for their own advantage. So it is actually somewhat nerve-wracking, and that's something that I think about because I'm someone who's involved in building very complex technologies for large corporates. So when I look at those, what can happen, who can get acquired, and how these things can end up is very interesting. So always that's the reason why at the beginning I mentioned, like, technology is one thing. The second thing is about trust and ethics and how we basically really embrace with the technology those two things. So I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, the human was one who make these things, will destroy those things as well. So we have to be very careful who we partner up with, who are the technology that you're using and come to.
Yeah. And it's about asking questions. I think Barbara's put a really good comment in the chat there about corporate clients. When you mention AI, it makes them really nervous. And
Right.
I think it's good to be nervous. I don't think that is something we should be frightened of, because we do actually want people to say, "Ooh, tell me more." So nervous, but don't let that shut things down. I was talking to a charity the other day, and they had started letting their people use ChatGPT a while ago, and then they deal with the vulnerable children, and one of their staff members uploaded a document which contained details about that vulnerable child, and they hadn't switched to the privacy mode of using the tool. So this information then has been released out into the wild. So, understanding the tools well enough, so you ask enough questions because you're nervous to understand the tools well enough and then proceed with caution and make things safe is absolutely crucial. What that charity then did, of course, this is like trying to drive down a road when you're only making enormous movements on the steering wheel. What they did then was just ban everybody in the organization from using these generative AI tools and ChatGPT, which of course is crazy because everybody goes to work with one of these in their pocket. So even if it's banned on your official work machine, you could get your phone out and use it anyway. So it's about training. So getting people to ask questions, training, and not doing it just once. I can't tell you how many sessions I've done with senior executives, leaders in organizations, where we've gone through, really got them understanding what AI is. And then they turn around to me a week later or at the next session and say, "Isn't it amazing how these generative AI tools find the truth, find, the information I'm looking for?" And I keep saying to them, but remember, we said they're not. They're putting words together in a way that is probably a good answer to whatever you've put into it. They're not finding truth for you. That idea still hadn't gone in despite all the effort that we put in there. So we've got to keep training, keep helping people learn and understand.
I have to say, I love the question Denver asks in the comments just about AI and humanity. That's my whole, my whole lens when it comes to AI is, and the way that the question is asked is, what type of world are we working to create? What is the impact on the human heart mind, body, and relationships? And that is the question that I think is so essential and that we need to keep at the forefront of the conversations. When I'm deciding how I want to use AI, when I'm deciding what particular tool I want to use, those are the very questions that I think are so important to ask. We don't necessarily have control over the speed of the innovation, but we do have control over how we choose to use it and how we implement it, and the mindfulness that we have about how this impacts the human connection.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And we've got to remember that there's 2.5 billion people in the world who are not on the internet. They're not connected digitally at all. So we, in the decisions we make, are actually making decisions for their world as well. So that's quite a scary responsibility. There's a woman called Rachel Caldecott who I think put it brilliantly when she said, we need to make sure that AI benefits 8 billion people, not just 8 billionaires. And that for me is the crux, that you've got a tiny number of people in organization who are designing and controlling this world. And we all need to get knowledgeable and push back. And when we see things that we don't like that big tech companies are doing, then we need to tell them, we are not satisfied. This is not good enough. We want you to make the world a better place for everybody in it and not just make lots of money. I'll just quickly say, Sam, I was on a panel recently with a load of entrepreneurs using technology in lots of ways. And one of them, I was talking, of course, about responsible AI and AI governance. One of them said, Sue, I'm never going to be a client of yours. I just want my company to make shed loads of money. And I said, okay, fine. I totally get where you're coming from, but you can make shed loads of money and do some good in the world. It's not binary. You can do both. To be honest, I don't think that message sunk in with him because he was very narrowly focused. But we need to keep telling people who are at the forefront of this technology to think more like you do, Sam. You come to this from social purpose, from thinking about impact, and that is absolutely laudable. So, Sam, we're going to be cloning you and making more people who think like you do.
Yes.
That's exactly. This is the time to basically do that. This is the time to collaborate and work together as well. I think, this is the sort of movement that we are creating in the world of, people discussing these things. Before that, maybe, we were talking about the social media, Bitcoin and all that. Suddenly people are wakening up to, the new threat that we basically believe. But like, again, Pam's point, how do we use it? How are we using it responsibly? Be informed, like, going to sort of Sue's point. So, I mean, these kind of forums create that, openness, and hopefully we can basically sort of create that culture that we want to create one day. So on that note, shall we go into the next steps? So what I think.
Yeah, I won't share the screen just to save on time, but really you need to engage leadership. If you're in an organization, you certainly need to engage your stakeholders, whether that's clients, other people that you work with, your wider network, in talking about responsible AI, in talking about how you might drive the organization forward. Secondly, encourage experimentation. These tools are very interesting, very dynamic, changing all the time. If we have a culture that only accepts perfection, then when we experiment with AI tools, inevitably things won't always go right. If we do an experiment, behind the scenes and never actually release something out into the wild, sometimes we will say, oh, we've wasted money on something that didn't work. So if your culture allows for experimentation, that is great in the world of AI. And then considering the risks and potential impacts, clearly crucial, because we must consider those before we start using tools, before we release them out there. Start small. I would always encourage people to do on low risk. So if you're not using any AI automations at the moment, look at things that are in the background to the way that you work. So some of those automations that just help you schedule your work, for example, simple things to do. They don't interfere with those client relationships. They're not going to be releasing data where you don't want it to go. Set some clear success metrics so you can pat yourself on the back when things go right and learn from things if they don't. And that's the final point there. Keep learning, keep iterating, because this world is changing so fast. None of us know everything. It's impossible to know everything. So we keep on learning and stretching and growing our brains.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, I mean, just going to very, very quickly, just, because we talked about the opportunities earlier, and what we want to create with you is, again, we see a vision in the future. How we envisage to happen is lot more humans come together, collaborating. So we see a lot more coaches, solopreneurs speaking to us saying that, can I find a partner who's coming from a maybe financial background because I want to basically win this corporate, maybe contract. So we also see a huge opportunities happening in this space where humans come together and working together. And also in terms of the sort of we talk about the AI note taker is something that we would want to build specifically for coaching, because I saw earlier Denise sort of comment around that coaching is not one thing, like not just a generic term. It can be very specific to certain audience. It could be specific to certain vertical. So absolutely. So we want to create these multiple themes in coaching within our AI note taker, so you can get the right kind of information, insights, which I think going back to Sue's point about how can we get more insights about my engagement with coaching and how I can basically be better at it. Then coaching data insights, something that we talk about. We wanted to give you a lot more information. Again, how we can build these tools with you, so with your feedback. And something that Pamela and I was talking about many times is that how we can help coaches to scale this coaching, because again, some of us are very technical and we can basically build things. Some of them are like maybe moderate, right, of technical. You want to play around and you don't mind getting annoyed. But most of the coaches are coming from a consultancy or management HR backgrounds, and you're not really tech savvy as Pam in this case. So she basically went ahead and basically built her own avatar, the coaching board. But we want to create our own service, help with your data, with your the resource materials that you upload to our platform as well. So they are all going to sit with you and under your ownership. These are the things that we are creating to help you navigate this space much better and effectively without you having to learn and build things yourselves. So we have a quick survey in the background because we do these events every month, and we love to hear from you. What would you like to us to sort of present next time? Or we talk about, we have an event coming up next month about coaching, ethics in coaching. So we have several speakers line up for that as well. So follow us on social media, and again, attend these webinars. We try to share this wisdom with the help of Sue and Pam. Like we are very generous with their knowledge and experience to share that wisdom with you. So we want to bring these speakers, and if you even think that there's a speaker we should basically bring and maybe share their knowledge, experience with you and others, we're happy to do that. So feel free, please attend, again, take part on that survey, that or question that we're sharing with you. Finally, we have some specific questions that we want to discuss. I know we are almost over the hour, but Sue, Pam, we have a couple, maybe 5-10 minutes to spare. Is that all right?
I'm good. I guess I'm good.
I have another meeting I got to get to, so I got about 5 minutes left.
All right, so let's maybe if there's specific questions that we want to ask, Dan, anything that we want to address in the live chat before Sue?
I think there's a lot of interesting questions on the live chat. New jobs are needed. I'm just looking at those things.
Right. Maybe let's address the first question. What specific steps should coaches take to assess AI tools for the ethics and risk perspective? So I think this will be a great question to answer just before your meeting, maybe.
Yeah, so I think conducting due diligence on any AI tools is absolutely essential. So it's too easy. In fact, it's too easy to take on a tool and not even know that there's AI built into it. One of my clients started using AI in a call center. So this was a telephone answering system, and they had no idea that artificial intelligence was built into the system. Nobody told them through the whole procurement process that AI was actually in this system, and it was switched on by default. So they started getting some results and some strange things happening on the screens, going, what is going on here? And that was how they found out that AI was built into the tool. So conducting due diligence of your vendors is really important. And what are their policies? You can ask them questions about what biases are there in the data. If anybody says to you, oh, there's no bias in our data, we've de-biased it, that is such rubbish. Statistically, all data has bias, unless you're sampling the entire population of whatever it is you're trying to make a judgment about, which we never do. We're always got a sample rather than the whole population. There will always be statistical bias. So the question isn't, is there bias? The question is, what biases are there? And do they matter for what I'm trying to achieve here? So you also want to ask vendors about what their approach is on transparency and explainability, and look for their data flows just like you would with any third-party tool. Where is the data being held? Where is it moving to? Because with AI data centers, they are whizzing data around the world very, very fast to go into different data centers. So that could be in breach of data protection rules just in itself. And then lastly, of course, think about the data itself. Data minimization is a crucial part of thinking about using AI with wisdom and integrity. I was at a session recently where a very, very experienced entrepreneur who'd been on Dragon's Den in the UK in the past had set up an AI company. And he was saying to people, gather in as much data about your customers as you can. And I was going, no, the principle of data minimization is incredibly important. Only get that data if you really have a genuine need for it. Don't just hoover up lots of data because you think you might in the past. And again, that's in our existing data protection regulations, but people forget about it. So applying those regulations, thinking about them in the AI context is what we need to do, but particularly pin down those suppliers of third-party tools and make sure they can answer those questions too.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So thank you so much. I think we could quickly go to the other questions as well. I mean, so if I know this is basically you have a limited time, and if you want to sort of leave, that's absolutely fine. Thank you so much for your time.
And we'll sign off now. Lovely to meet you and to talk to everybody today, and good luck with your coaching practice. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Sue. Great
We're
information.
happy to spare the next 5 minutes, right, Pam? So we can basically go through quickly the few questions, and
Sure.
and if you have anything we want to sort of address specifically, please mention the chat, and we'll follow up with you with an email. So what is the next one? You should basically say what explicit consent is required from client to use AI. Pam, you have any idea on that? Any comments on that, please?
Not any different than what I mentioned before. Is this a question on the screen or is this a question on the chat?
It's on the screen. The third question.
Oh, okay.
Right, in the terms.
Yeah. So I would say there's not necessarily requirements. There are strong recommendations, and I think that those recommendations, even the ICF is, International Coach Federation is having conversations and developing recommendations and ethical policies for AI coaching. And again, I emphasize ethical because it's not law. So you're not going to get fined or penalized for not doing these things, but they're more so following ethics. So really putting it on paper, putting it in the contract, and then having, I think, in addition, a verbal conversation about because a lot of people don't understand what it is. To one of the participants' points about apprehension around use of AI, when mentioning it to their clients, I think that's why those conversations are so important, because when we say AI, it means a whole lot of things, and that can be really confusing. Sometimes the words AI alone, not sometimes, it's just not enough. Just we have to get really specific about what it is we're using, and even asking those questions of the platform we're using. If there's a frequently asked question page, if there's a way to chat, how is this data secure? To what extent do you as a coach care that it's secure? So doing a little digging before you just jump into any platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question because I know how important the data is, and in fact, Delenta is ISO 27001 certification. We basically achieved that as well. Sort of one of the rarest sort of certification in the technology world. For ISO 27001, which is more on governance, compliance, and cybersecurity aspects of it. And some of our customers use our data protection policies to share with their customers to make sure that how we protect their data. To show that our platform Delenta this is how they use your data, and this is my policy. This is how I use your data. So basically, it's a combined effect. So that's why I think trust and ethics is a huge role in the industry that we are in. I mean, anywhere, any industry actually, but in coaching, you probably have customers who are sharing a lot of private, confidential data, which basically make even more sensitive. Just on that note, we have to conclude the session for today. Please follow us on social media.
Looking to streamline and scale your business? Sign up with Delenta today.